the federal government is the only one who has the capacity, the capability of dishing out money to their citizens right now. And that's what they're there for. And that's why lots of people keep saying things like, we need to get rid of all this regulation. We need to get rid of all of this oversight. We need to get rid of all of these extra little parts of federal government that are just kind of unnecessary. So we're not getting taxed so much. The Tea Partiers were very much in favor of getting rid of things like the CDC. Okay. But we have these things for situations like this, and whether or not you want to get rid of them, we've already put the money into them for situations like this. And so now the situation's here, and the government isn't actually doing their part. We've already paid for this. We've already paid for a stimulus package. We've already paid for a pandemic plan. We've paid for all of this already. It's time for us to get our money back. It's time for our investment to come to fruition. So anyways, so if you go into this and you look at the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act on Wikipedia, okay, you see down here, okay, introduced on March 19th, 2019. Now, I can't explain this. Can anybody explain to me why the Coronavirus Security Act, this is a relief act, right? This is an act that Congress voted on for money, like stimulus for the American people. Why was this introduced in March of 2019? Let's see. I would first check to see if that it wasn't a typo. It was not meant to be 2020. I've checked 20 different places. They all say the bill was introduced in 2019. Every single one of them says 2019. And we can go through and look at some more of these. I mean, this is just one section of Wikipedia article, but really false claim. CARES Act bill hinting at coronavirus conspiracy. Here we go. We might have an answer here. Okay. An image circulating on social media makes the claim that Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, known as the CARES Act, was introduced as a bill to Congress in January 2019, insinuating that lawmakers were anticipating the coronavirus outbreak. Reuters fact check. The image appears to be a screenshot of Wikipedia entry legislation with the introduction date January 24th, 2019, circled in blue. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, that's what we were looking at. The image appears to be a screenshot of a Wikipedia. According to the official Congress records, CARES Act HR became public on March 27, 2020, after passing a Senate March 25th and the House of Representatives March 27th. It is true that HR 748 was originally introduced as a bill on January 24th, 2019 by Representative Joe Courtney of Connecticut. At the time, however, the bill was titled the Middle Class Health Benefits. Yes, that's what I thought. I knew it. I thought the whole time. I'm like, this has to be that they just renamed the bill. Like, it has to be that that it started off with one name and then they changed it to something else. Let's see. Sounds like an old bill they finally got passed by the rolling of the virus. Yeah, and they renamed it to coronavirus, and that actually makes a lot of sense. And that's what I thought. I like, truly, that's what I kept saying from the beginning, but I looked for it all over the place and I never found it. I couldn't find it anywhere. I couldn't find anything saying that the bill had been renamed. And so That's actually a bit of a relief because I was starting to get frustrated. Like, I've been doing nothing but debunking all of these coronavirus conspiracy theories for weeks now. And then I come upon one that I can't figure out. I would also like to know, and maybe somebody already knows this, but I would also like to know what it is that Republicans currently have an issue with when it comes to the new coronavirus relief package. Because there's the new $3 trillion relief package that we have, and it turns out that people, or the Senate, the Republican senators are not going to vote for it. And I'd really like to know why. I mean, it's obvious that the people need the money. It's obvious that there's a lot of people out of work right now. They definitely need the money. So what is it that the Republican senators have a problem with in this relief bill? I mean, does anybody know right off the... I don't know if you guys could hear that, but that a loud bang just went off. But anyways, does anybody know what the issue is? Does anybody know why people have an issue with the why Republicans have an issue with the new stimulus bill, the $3 trillion stimulus bill? Because if we go into like an article, okay, so House passes $3 trillion coronavirus stimulus plan, faces pushback in Republican-led Senate. So, like, all right, we can assume there's trouble here because it's got Nancy Pelosi standing at the front of it. In every picture that I've seen when they talk about the House passing the bill, it's always got a picture of Nancy Pelosi standing at the front of it. So I would really like to know what it is that Republicans have an issue with. Just injecting that amount of cash will have consequences. So I don't understand what that means. Like, injecting that amount of cash as if people didn't have jobs before. Like, they had jobs, they had cash, they made a lot more money than they will off of any sort of stimulus plan. The economy is having a lot of issues right now. It's not as bad as a lot of people think it is, but it's bad. Like, a lot of people are out of work. A lot of people are on unemployment, and unemployment, especially in Georgia, has a lot of issues. I mean, there's so many people who are not getting their paychecks right now. I know so many people who are having trouble feeding their kids while trying to get the money from unemployment. They call the Department of Labor. They don't answer the phone. You leave message after message after message, and they never call you back. And so I'm not sure there's a relationship between time, money, and work. Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm not gonna disagree with that. I think that there's a relationship between them. But if the government says you can't go to work, if the government tells you you are not allowed to go to work, don't you think that the government kind of has a responsibility now to pay you, not only to pay you, but also to pay your work and make sure that your work doesn't now go out of business trying to pay rent or their lease or whatever it is, that while they're not allowed to make money because the government says you're not allowed to open up right now, shouldn't the government be paying all of their bills in the meantime? And not only their bills, but also be paying the bills of all of their employees that aren't able to work either? I mean, even if it is for our own protection, even if it is for our own good that everybody doesn't go to work, isn't it best that the government actually pays for everybody's bills if they're going to tell you that you can't go to work? My answer is, don't do you any good if you starving and about to be kicked out of your residence, though. Oh, your answers don't do any good. Yeah. No, you're right. I don't think the government should pay anything. So if the government tells you tomorrow, they say, David, you're not allowed to work anymore. You have to go sit inside your house for the next month. You don't think that it is now the government's responsibility to pay you. If they say you are not allowed to go to work, you're not allowed to go outside, you're not allowed to make money, and your businesses or the business that you work for is also going to stop opening the doors, and they're not allowed to make money either. I don't see how that doesn't now, especially in a free market economy, I don't see how that doesn't now become the government's responsibility to make sure that you don't starve to death. Yeah, I mean the banks, and that should, I believe that that's part of the relief packages, is that you're now actually there's like a bunch of forgiveness that the banks are supposed to give. Like in the stimulus package, they actually say that like that banks aren't allowed to come after you for your house during the lockdown, that they're not allowed to come after your car during the lockdown, but as soon as all of this is over, like day one, you're able to go back to work, you're able to go look for a job again, those banks are able to collect. I mean, day one, they're able to collect. So, I mean, but it's not, the banks aren't the ones who told us that we couldn't go to work. The banks aren't the ones who said, you're not allowed to go to work, you're not allowed to make money right now. They didn't do that.
Says she will be opening again today, as she has for the last couple of days. Shelley Luther started providing haircuts again last Friday in violation of county and state shelter-at-home orders. The city issued a citation on Friday. The county issued a cease and desist notice as well. Governor Abbott did not include salons when he announced his phase one of his business reopening plan for this week. Luther, though, says she will appeal the temporary restraining order.
Essential, non-essential, that's ridiculous what has been deemed essential and non-essential, because right now the pet groomer next door has been essential the whole time. So pets can get their hair done, but someone can't walk in my salon and get their hair cut. So why is a pet getting essentials?
Now is not the time to put your need for making money over the law as laid out by the governor of the city and the county.
The judge gave her the option to avoid jail time if she would close her salon and admit she was wrong for defiantly reopening April 24th and remaining open despite a temporary restraining order and other legal action. She refused and also has to pay a $7,000 fine.
Excuse me.
There's a remedy of $500 to 6 months.
You will not speak over me. Sit down and be quiet. I am not through speaking. Do not say another word while I'm speaking, and you will not interrupt me again in this court.
Said, what if, let's say a big if, a side effect of all this money is being added was the value of $1 was now worthless. Okay, so the difference, the thing that you're talking about is inflation. And I don't think that as long as this doesn't come from the Fed, as long as they're not printing new money to make this, to send this stimulus out, then there is no inflation. And so all of this money is just money that we've already made, and then we paid it in taxes, and the government has it, and then they give it to us. The value of the dollar goes down if there are more dollars out there. And so as long as there aren't more dollars out there, the value of the dollar will stay the same. This isn't new money that's being printed to send to us. This is money that we gave them, that they're holding on to for something like this. And now they're giving it back to us.
Luther held news conferences and mocked public officials and ripped up the order. Her attorney tried to present evidence that she was operating the salon safely, but the judge said the issue was not how she was operating, but that she was operating at all. He told Luther citizens cannot pick and choose which laws they can follow, and then told her he was giving her an opportunity to not go to jail if she admitted what she did was wrong.
That you now see the error of your ways and understand that the society cannot function where one's own belief in a concept of liberty permits you to flaunt your disdain for the rulings of duly elected officials, that you owe an apology to the elected officials whom you disrespected by flagrantly ignoring and in one case defiling their orders, which you now know obviously apply to you. That you understand that the proper way in which in an ordered society to engage concerns which you may have had is to hire a lawyer and advocate for change, an exception or an amendment to laws that you find offensive. That you publicly state that this is the way that citizens in the state should behave. And that you represent to this court that you will today cease operation of your salon and not reopen until after further orders of the government permit you to do so. This court will consider the payment of a fine in lieu of the incarceration.
I have to disagree with you, sir, when you say that I'm selfish, because feeding my kids is not selfish.
And I understand what he's saying. I've called a lot of people selfish who keep telling me that they shouldn't have to stop going to work, that they shouldn't have to wear a mask, they shouldn't have to wear gloves. Like, I tell these people all the time that they are kind of selfish for doing this. Not kind of selfish, they're very selfish, especially when you consider all of the high-risk people. And say that we just tell the high-risk people, okay, just stay inside. High-risk people, just stay inside. Old people, stay inside. If you have diabetes, just stay inside. Somebody still has to go get their groceries. Somebody still has to go to the bank. Somebody still has to go get gas and bring this stuff to them. And they're still coming into contact with you while you don't have a mask on, you don't have gloves on, and they're bringing this back to whoever it is that shouldn't be going outside. And it makes absolutely no difference if somebody else has to go out for them and then they bring all of these germs back to this person. Okay? It's still selfish, even if you say, hey, all the old people, y'all stay home and let the rest of us get on with our lives. Yes, this is still selfish. And you might say, well, I think it's selfish, but I think it's worth the risk because we can't just let the economy crash. Fine. That's a totally different argument that I'm willing to have. And if you want to make that point, go ahead in the chat. I am happy to address that. But whether or not it's selfish, it's definitely selfish. And this lady has to admit that, yes, it is selfish, but it is selfish it's selfish, but it's also like something that I need to do for my employees. It's something that I need to do for myself. It's something that I need to do for my employees' kids. Like it's definitely selfish no matter how you look at it. It's still selfish.
Hairstylists that are going hungry because they'd rather feed their kids. So, sir, if you think the law is more important than kids getting fed, and please go ahead with your decision, but I'm not going to shut the salon. So
I actually make this point all of the time. When people say things like, and I don't want to get into an entire conversation about abortion, but lots of people will say things like, oh, so you think a woman who will have to quit school and quit her job and will possibly starve to death because she has to stay home and take care of this kid, you think that that's okay? And I'm like, well, are we talking about whether or not this is murder or whether or not that this is convenient for her? Because if we're saying it's murder, but it's just inconvenient for her, and so now we should allow abortion, my argument would still be the same. We don't say that just because a man has to steal to feed his family, that now he shouldn't have to go to jail when he gets caught for it. No, you steal to feed your family. It's an honorable thing. It's something that you do, and it's something that you have to do. But in order to keep a society running, we have to arrest these people anyways. Almost half the population has some kind of chronic illness. So combine that with the elderly, a lot more people than you think. Yeah, it would surprise you the amount of people who are actually high risk. Anybody who has diabetes, anybody who's had their spleen removed, anybody who's had anybody who was a smoker for a long time, anybody who's overweight, like these are all people who are high risk right now. Any sort of health issues, you're going to have a higher risk of not only getting coronavirus, but of also having a serious case of it. I'm very much in in favor of keeping things localized, not for sure the federal government should be paying perhaps each state. So I agree with this. And a lot of people keep saying stuff like, oh, so you think that somebody who lives out in the boonies and there's a mile between each house, that they should have to wear gloves and a mask and they shouldn't be able to go to work and all this stuff. No, like there's different issues there are different situations for different places. Some place like the farther into the city you get, once you get to the city or the suburbs, like you're more and more crowded. You have a lot of people closer together. They're compacted. There's nothing that you can do about it at that point. Like you can't just socially distance the entire time. You're going to bump up against people. You're going to, you're going to be like right up against people no matter what you do. And so, it does depend on the region that you're in, which is why places like China, New York City, Italy, like these places are super compacted. In New York, they are all very compacted. They're living in high-rise buildings everywhere. There's people bumping shoulders and brushing up against each other all the time while you're walking down the road, walking down the sidewalk. I'm from New York. I've lived there before. You cannot walk 5 feet without people rubbing up against each other. So yes, no, depending on what region you live in, the virus is going to affect you very differently. Not every place should have to shut down. Not every place should have the exact same ordinances. And for the most part, each city and each state has been able to have their own plan and their own way of getting through this. Even when Trump said to Kemp, I don't think that you should be opening back up yet. I disagree with your decision. He didn't turn around and make it to where Kemp was no longer allowed to open back up. Kemp still did it, and they're still doing what they want. And in each city, I work in the food industry. Each city has their own health inspections, and they have their own rules and regulations that they're putting into place on whether or not you can go into bars and whether or not you can sit inside of restaurants and whether or not you can stand in a line at McDonald's. Like they all have their own rules and regulations as far as that goes. But as far as money goes, counties and cities are not holding on to thousands and thousands of dollars. Okay. They're not holding on to enough money to help feed their citizens. But the federal government, those people, I mean, when you look at your taxes, every time you get a pay stub, look at that. I mean, I think I got like maybe $100 back in tax returns from the state. And then I got like $2,000 back from the federal government on my tax returns. Like the federal government is the only one who has the capacity, the capability of dishing out money to their citizens right now. And that's what they're there for. And that's why lots of people keep saying things like, we need to get rid of all this regulation. We need to get rid of all of this oversight. We need to get rid of all of these extra little parts of federal government that are just kind of unnecessary, so we're not getting taxed so much. The Tea Partiers were very much in favor of getting rid of things like the CDC, okay? But we have these things for situations like this, and whether or not you want to get rid of them, we've already put the money into them for situations like this. And so now the situation's here, and the government isn't actually doing their part. We've already paid for this. We've already paid for a stimulus package. We've already paid for a pandemic plan. We've paid for all of this already. It's time for us to get our money back. It's time for our investment to come to fruition. I don't think that getting our money back is actually going to have any sort of negative impact on the economy. I think it's only going to help the economy because people are going to be able to spend money. They're going to get money. They're going to be able to go out to the grocery stores. They're going to be able to go out to Pizza Hut. They're going to be able to go to Domino's. They're going to be able to go to Taco Bell and McDonald's and the Mexican restaurant and wherever else it is that they want to go. But if they don't get that stimulus package, then what happens? They just run out of money? I mean, the last time they only got $1,200, so they paid rent for 1 month. That's it. They were just able to pay rent. Anybody who's been out of work, anybody who is still at a high-risk person still cannot go back to work. It didn't change for them just because Kemp opened everything back up. For people who are high risk, it didn't change. And when it comes to our local government, they've been able to put people on unemployment, and they're not doing a good job of it. And I understand that they're not actually built to take this many people on. There is a record-setting amount of people on unemployment right now in every single state, and they are not set up to take on this many people. I completely understand this. But in the meantime, while they're scrambling to take care of millions of people, those people are starving. Those people have kids that are hungry. Those people have bills that they need to get paid. And it seems like, and you're right, like there's not an easy answer. There's not an easy answer to this. But the one thing I do know is that the federal government has the capability of dealing with this. And it's the only way that we're going to get through this. I mean, it's the only way that people who are high risk are going to be able to make it to the other side. I mean, and I don't know if people disagree with that, but as far as I understand, we're not inflating. The Fed is not pushing more dollars out to the American people. The Fed is not printing out new dollar bills so that we can get a stimulus. That's as far as I understand.